Alright children, welcome back to class. Today we're going to learn about the long run aggregate supply curve. Okay students, welcome back. Today we're going to be picking up where we left off. So we've been talking about aggregate supply and aggregate demand right now. Remember, this is the demand and supply of literally everything in the economy. So our aggregate supply curve is upward sloping because as price level goes up, businesses are going to try to produce more and make as much profit as they can while prices are high. As price level decreases, aggregate demand is going to increase because lower prices get, the more stuff we want to buy. Higher prices get, the less stuff we want to buy. Pretty simple. Remember, aggregate demand is made up of C, I, G, and X. It's going to be your consumer spending, your investment spending, your government spending, and your net exports. Okay, and yesterday we talked about how this is going to be our equilibrium in the aggregate demand, aggregate supply model. So right here, this is our price level, our current price level, which is a measure of inflation. If prices go up, then inflation is increasing. Prices go down, inflation is decreasing, so we're experiencing disinflation. And then right here, we're going to label our equilibrium output as Y1 because this stands for our real national income. Remember, income is Y1. We're measuring changes to the real GDP and our inflation rate. That's what we're measuring here. We're going to keep going on today though, however. From now on, right here, this X is going to be referred to as our short-run equilibrium. This is our short-run equilibrium. That's because this is going to be now called our short-run aggregate supply. It's our aggregate supply in the short run, just currently right now, maybe for like the next month or two. So this is our short-run aggregate supply curve, what we're currently producing. So we're going to call this current output. That is our current output. Okay, so our long run aggregate supply curve is actually going to be a straight up and down line. It's just going to be straight up, and we're going to call this LRAS, aka long run aggregate supply. LRAS, aka long run aggregate supply. And basically what's happening here, this is the amount of stuff, our real GDP, our output, if we're experiencing only the natural rate of unemployment. This F down here, YF, stands for full employment output. Full employment output. This is how much stuff we could make if we're only experiencing the natural rate of unemployment. So this is also, you could also refer to this as our potential real GDP. This is how much we should be able to make if we're only experiencing the natural rate of unemployment and we're at full employment output. In the long run, as price level goes up, as inflation increases in the long run, wages are also going up because over time, as prices go up, businesses are going to have to pay people more. So that's our long run aggregate supply curve. In the long run, prices and wages are fully flexible. As price level goes up, wages too go up in the long run. In the short run, that is not the case. In the short run, our short run aggregate supply curve, that's an R, God, that's terrible. In the short run, as prices increase, wages don't change. Think about it, if you work at HEB and next week gas costs $1 more and all the food that you buy is like 50 cents more than it used to be, your boss isn't going to just say, oh hey, prices went up a little bit, I'm going to pay you more now. That's not going to happen. They're going to wait as long as they possibly can. So in the short run, as prices go up, businesses don't pay people more right away. They hire more people because in the short run, we have sticky wages. Wages take time to change, so they tend to be sticky. In the short run, they're sticky. They take time to change. They're based on things like contracts with unions and stuff like that. So in the short run, as price level goes up, wages don't change yet. They take like maybe a year to change or more. I mean, the federal minimum wage hasn't changed in 11 years. So as price level goes up, HEB isn't gonna pay me more. They're gonna hire 3 more people just like me and sell as much stuff as they can while the prices are high and the wages haven't changed. So they're gonna sell as much as they can because there's a higher profit to be had. After a while, me and all my friends that work at HEB are gonna get cranky and we're gonna say, hey, if you don't pay us more, I'm gonna go find a different job or quit. So then they decide to raise wages, and then after that, the wages will shift back. Wages increase, short run aggregate supply shifts back to the left, and now prices and wages are higher. And that's why in the long run, prices and wages are fully flexible, because over time, this keeps happening. As prices go up, wages are gonna go up with it eventually. All right, so again, in the long run aggregate supply curve, this represents our output at full employment. That's why the F's there. This is how much we could make if we were experiencing only the natural rate of unemployment. So when we're at full employment, we're in what's called long run equilibrium. Our demand. All right, so this is our price level. This is the expected inflation if we're operating at our long run equilibrium. If we're only experiencing the natural rate of unemployment. So again, this is long run equilibrium. This is an economy that if this was the production possibility curve, this would be operating right there, right on the curve. That's what we'd be experiencing. This is long run equilibrium. Everything's wonderful. All right, if we are short of our potential real GDP, if we're in long run disequilibrium, if we're short of our potential GDP, we would be making less stuff than we should be able to, and we'd be in what is called a recession. If you're in a recession, your short run equilibrium, and what I mean by that is your X right here, your short run equilibrium, is going to be to the left of the long run aggregate supply curve. And so this is what we would call a recession. This is a recessionary gap. So this is a recessionary gap. This is when our short run equilibrium is to the left of the long run aggregate supply curve. What we're experiencing here looks like this on our production possibility curve, dot inside the curve. We're going to be having high unemployment, and we'll tend to be having lower inflation. Our price level will probably be lower. Finally, we have what we would call an inflationary gap. This is if we're producing beyond our potential. So if we're over here, if our short run equilibrium is to the right of the long run aggregate supply curve, we're in what's called an inflationary gap, and we're actually operating at a rate of unemployment that is below the natural rate of unemployment. So like if this was 5% unemployment or full employment output, this would be like 4% unemployment. You're in an inflationary gap, prices are going up, your unemployment rate is really low, and we're producing a greater amount than our potential real GDP. All right, now we're gonna get in some practice here so we can understand how this really works.
We're talking about practice.
All right, children, let's get a couple practice problems in real quick. So we need to set up our graph. Real GDP down here in the bottom right-hand corner. Top left-hand corner, we got price level. And then what I always do with these, the first thing you need to draw is your long-run aggregate supply curve. We're gonna draw our potential output, AKA our output at full employment, what we could do if we were only experiencing the natural rate of unemployment, and then we're seeing where our short-run equilibrium, or X, is in comparison to that. All right, so this first one says that we're gonna assume the country is operating at an output below full employment. So for this first one, it's an economy that's operating below full employment. And so that means that we're not making as much stuff as we would be able to if we were at full employment. So that means we're short of our full employment output. And so our short run equilibrium, or our X, is gonna go to the left of our long run aggregate supply curve. Aggregate demand is right here. Here's our price level. And here's our real GDP. We are in a recessionary gap. We were experiencing high unemployment. And now it tells us that we have to see, how does an increase in consumer confidence affect our output, our price level, and our real GDP? So, consumer confidence. People think that the economy is about to get better. They decide that they're going to start spending more. Consumers are going to affect aggregate demand. Remember, aggregate demand is made up of C, I, G, and X. And so if we're more confident, consumers are going to spend more money. Aggregate demand is going to increase and shift to the right. Look at that. We got ourselves out of this recession. Yeah. Our inflation is going to go up. Our price level has gone up. However, our real GDP is also going up. So our real income is going up. Our new Y is here. And our unemployment rate is going to be going down. We're pulling ourselves out of that recession. So again, we're always going to start with our long-run aggregate supply curve, and then we can go from there. So we can see, are we short of that? Are we in a recession? Are we beyond full employment? Are we in an inflationary gap? Or are we right perfect in long-run equilibrium? So number 2 says, nope. All right, number 3 says, we're assuming an economy that has an unemployment rate which is below the natural rate of unemployment. So right here, this YF, we're going to pretend that at full employment, or not pretend, but we're going to assume at full employment, we have a 5% unemployment rate. So our natural rate of unemployment is about 5%. If the current rate of unemployment is less than that, well then it's a number less than 5%. Let's say 4%. If we have an unemployment rate that is at 4%, below the natural rate of unemployment, then we are beyond full employment. We are producing a greater amount than our potential real GDP. So our short-run aggregate supply curve, or short-run equilibrium, or X, is going to be to the right of the long-run aggregate supply curve, and we are in what is called an inflationary gap. Here's our price level. Here's our current output. Y1 for our current output, PO1 for our price level. All right, what's going to happen to our output and our price level if the government decides to raise taxes? If the government raises taxes on households, that is going to affect the C in aggregate demand, CIGX. It's going to affect consumers. If we raise taxes, consumers will literally have less money to spend. They'll spend less, aggregate demand will decrease and shift to the left. What we end up with is a lower price level. We're back at full employment output, and our real GDP has decreased. Our unemployment rate has gone up, but we're still operating at the natural rate of unemployment.